That day, when my daughter's friend visited our house, was one of the craziest yet most exciting days of my life. It all started on a normal Saturday afternoon. The sun dipped low over the horizon, casting a warm golden glow through the windows of my living room. I leaned against the kitchen counter, nursing a glass of water, while the soft hum of the evening news played in the background. It was supposed to be a quiet weekend. My daughter Danielle was away on a camping trip with her college friends, leaving the house feeling unusually still. Then the doorbell rang. I wasn't expecting anyone. Setting my glass down, I moved to the door, opening it to find Sophia, Danielle's best friend, standing there. Her dark eyes held a flicker of hesitation. Her posture almost apologetic as she greeted me. "Hey, Mrs. Johnson," she said with a sheepish smile. "I hope I'm not bothering you." Danielle told me to stop by if I needed to borrow anything for the trip, but I didn't realize she'd already left. Sophia had been Danielle's friend for years. I'd seen her grow from an awkward teenager into a confident, athletic young woman. There was always something about Sophia. Quiet maturity that stood out in the way she carried herself. A warmth in her smile that put people at ease. She had always been polite, thoughtful, the kind of friend any parent would want for their child. "It's no bother," I said, stepping aside to let her in. "What do you need?" She shifted her weight, looking almost embarrassed. "Actually, I forgot my sleeping bag at home. I thought Danielle might have a spare." I chuckled, shaking my head. "She probably does. Let me check the garage." I gestured for her to follow me. And as we made our way to the garage, I couldn't help but notice how much she had changed since the last time I'd seen her. She was taller now, more confident in her movements. Her shirt clung to her frame in a way that made it clear she'd been hitting the gym regularly. I felt a strange pang of awareness zone. I immediately pushed aside. In the garage, I rummaged through a stack of camping gear until I found the spare sleeping bag. I handed it to her, brushing off the dust. "Here you go," I said. "Danielle won't mind." "Thanks, Mrs. Johnson," she said, her smile genuine. She hesitated for a moment before adding, "Do you mind if I hang out for a bit? My ride's not coming for another hour, and I don't want to just sit in the car." "Of course," I said. "Come on in." We ended up in the kitchen where I brewed a pot of coffee. Sophia leaned against the counter, her arms crossed as we chatted about her classes, her plans for the summer and the camping trip. She had always been easy to talk to, thoughtful and articulate in a way that made conversations with her feel natural. But as the minutes passed, I began to notice something or different. The way her gaze lingered a second longer than necessary when our eyes met. The way she shifted closer as she leaned against the counter. Her presence filling the space between us. I tried to ignore it, chalking it up to my imagination. But when she reached out to grab her mug, her fingers brushed against mine, and the warmth of her touch sent a jolt through me. "Sorry," she said, pulling her hand back quickly. "It's fine," I said, forcing a chuckle. "I'm just clumsy." But the tension in the room was palpable now, the air between us thick with something unspoken. I busied myself with the coffee, trying to shake the strange feeling that had settled in my chest. This was Sophia, me daughter's best friend. Whatever I thought I was feeling, it wasn't real. It couldn't be. "Mrs. Johnson," she said after a long pause, her voice softer now. "Can I ask you something?" "Of course," I said, turning to face her. She hesitated, her gaze dropping to the floor before meeting mine. "Have you ever felt like you wanted something you knew you shouldn't?" The question caught me off guard, and I felt my pulse quicken. "That's a pretty heavy question," I said, trying to keep my tone light. She gave a small self-conscious laugh, running a hand through her hair. "Yes, sorry. I guess I've just been thinking about it a lot lately." There was something in her tone and honesty, a vulnerability that made my chest tighten. I wanted to ask her what she meant to understand what was going on in her mind, but I wasn't sure I was ready to hear the answer. Sometimes we want things that aren't good for us, I said carefully. It's human nature, but that doesn't mean we have to act on them. She nodded, her gaze distant. Yeah, I guess you're right. But the way she looked at me after she said it, the flicker of something in her eyes, the way her lips parted slightly as if she wanted to say more, it left me unsettled. I turned back to the coffee pot, hoping the act of pouring us both another cup would give me something to focus on. But I couldn't shake the feeling that something had shifted between us, and I wasn't sure if it was something I could ignore. The coffee sat untouched between us as the conversation grew sparse. I could feel Sophia's presence like a heavy weight, and every subtle movement she made seemed magnified in the silence. The quiet wasn't uncomfortable, but it wasn't normal either. It was charged, like something unsaid was hanging in the air, waiting to break. Sophia leaned back in her chair, stretching slightly, and I caught myself glancing at her out of the corner of my eye. Her shirt lifted just enough to reveal a strip of taut, tan skin, and I immediately looked away, my face warming. This is ridiculous, I thought. Get a grip. So, I said, breaking the silence, are you excited about the camping trip? She shrugged, her lips curving into a small smile. Yeah, I guess. I mean, it's more for Danielle, really. She loves that kind of stuff. I'm just there for the company. Her words made me smile. That sounds like you, I said. Always looking out for her. You've been a great friend to Danielle over the years. Sophia looked down, her fingers toying with the edge of her mug. She's been a good friend to me too, she said quietly. Then after a pause, she added, You've been good to me too. There it was again, that softness in her tone, the unspoken layers behind her words. My chest tightened as I searched her face for some clue about what she was trying to say. But she didn't meet my gaze. I just mean, she continued, you've always made me feel welcome, like part of the family. That's not something I take for granted. I nodded, unsure of how to respond. Well, you are part of the family, Sophia. At least that's how I see it. She smiled at that, but it didn't quite reach her eyes. Thanks, Mrs. Johnson, she said. Then, almost as an afterthought, she added, You can call me Sophia. You know, the Mrs. Johnson thing feels too formal. I chuckled. All right, Sophia, but only if you stop calling me Mrs. Johnson. Deal, she said, her grin widening just enough to ease some of the tension in the room. We moved into the living room after that, settling onto the couch. The sun had set, and the soft glow of the table lamp cast warm shadows across the room. Sophia sat at the far end of the couch, her posture relaxed, but her eyes focused on me. Can I ask you something? She said, after a long stretch of silence. Of course, I replied, bracing myself for another loaded question. Have you ever felt like there was something you couldn't say out loud even though you really wanted to? I frowned, caught off guard by the question. I think everyone feels that way at some point, I said carefully. But sometimes saying it out loud is the only way to move forward. Sophia nodded, her gaze fixed on the floor. Yeah, she said softly. But what if saying it changes everything? Her words sent a chill down my spine, though I couldn't say why. I shifted in my seat, suddenly aware of how close we were, even with the space between us. Sometimes change is a good thing, I said, trying to keep my tone steady. Even if it's scary at first? She looked up then, her eyes locking onto mine. What if it's not? The weight of her gaze was almost too much, and I found myself looking away, unsure of how to navigate the sudden shift in our conversation. I guess it depends on what you're afraid of. Sophia didn't respond right away. When she finally spoke, Her voice was barely above a whisper. I'm afraid of ruining this, of ruining what we have. The vulnerability in her voice caught me off guard, and I felt my heart clench. Sophia, never mind, she said quickly, cutting me off. She stood abruptly, running a hand through her hair. I should probably go. My ride's probably close by now. I stood too, instinctively, reaching out to stop her. My hand closed around her arm and she froze, her eyes wide as she looked down on where we touched. You don't have to go, I said, my voice soft. Not if you don't want to. Sophia's gaze lifted to meet mine, and for a moment, neither of us moved. The air between us felt heavy, electric, like the moment before a storm. Then she took a step closer, closing the distance between us. I don't know what I'm doing, she admitted, her voice trembling. I just know I don't want to leave. Confusion, longing, they all swirled together, leaving me breathless. Sophia, I said, my voice barely audible. We can't. I know, she whispered, but I can't help it. She reached out then, her hand brushing against mine, and I felt a spark, an undeniable pull that left me frozen in place. I wanted to step back to put some distance between us, but I couldn't. Instead, I found myself leaning into the moment, my heart pounding in my chest. And then it happened. Her lips brushed against mine, soft, tentative, like she was testing the waters. My mind screamed at me to pull away, but my body betrayed me, frozen in place as the kiss deepened. The kiss lingered in the air between us, leaving a weight I didn't know how to bear. The world outside seemed to fall away, leaving only the two of us in the dimly lit living room. Sophia's breath was shallow, her hand hovering near mine, as if she was unsure whether to pull away or come closer. I started, but the words caught in my throat. She stepped back abruptly, running a hand through her hair. I'm sorry, she blurted, her voice shaky. I didn't mean to. I don't know what I was thinking. My chest felt tight, my heart pounding against my ribs as I searched for something to say. Sophia, it's okay. I managed, though I wasn't sure if I meant it. Nothing about this felt okay, and yet I couldn't deny the way my body had responded, the way I had leaned into the kiss, however briefly. She turned away, pacing across the room. No, it's not. It's not okay. I shouldn't have gone. Danielle would kill me if she knew. At the mention of my daughter, a cold wave of reality washed over me. This was wrong, so wrong. And yet the tension between us remained undeniable and unrelenting. Sophia, I said gently, trying to steady my voice. We need to talk about this. She stopped pacing, her shoulders tense as she turned to face me. What is there to talk about? I crossed the line. I messed up. I'm sorry. I took a step closer, my hands trembling at my sides. It's not just you, I admitted, the words tasting foreign in my mouth. I felt it too. Her eyes widened, and for a moment, the air between us crackled with something unspoken. Then she shook her head, her expression conflicted. We can't, she said firmly. You're Danielle's mom. I'm her best friend. Whatever this is, it's not supposed to happen. I know, I said, my voice barely above a whisper. But it already has. The silence that followed was suffocating. Sophia sat down on the couch, burying her face in her hands. I wanted to say something that might make this easier, but the truth was I didn't know how to navigate this either. After what felt like an eternity, she looked up at me, her eyes filled with a mix of fear and longing. What do we do now? I sat down beside her, careful to leave some space between us. I don't know, I admitted, but we need to figure it out. She nodded, her gaze dropping to the floor. I don't want to lose this, she said softly. Not just whatever this is, but you, your friendship, your trust. I don't want to ruin everything. Her words hit me hard, and I felt a pang of guilt for putting her in this position. Sophia had always been like family, someone I could rely on and trust. And yet, here we were, standing on the edge of something that could destroy all of that. "You're not going to lose me," I said, placing a hand on her shoulder. "No matter what happens, we'll figure this out." She leaned into my touch, her body relaxing slightly under my hand. "You mean that?" she asked, her voice filled with uncertainty. "I mean it," I said firmly, "but we have to be careful. This isn't just about us, it's about Danielle too." At the mention of my daughter, Sophia nodded, her expression somber. "You're right," she said. "We can't let her find out. It would destroy her." The weight of that truth settled over us, a reminder of just how precarious our situation was. But even as we sat there wrapped in silence, I couldn't ignore the way my hand lingered on her shoulder, or the way her body seemed to lean into mine. Hours passed and the tension between us didn't ease. We talked in circles, trying to make sense of what had happened and what it meant. But no matter how hard we tried to rationalize it, the pull between us remained undeniable and unrelenting. Sophia apparently did not have to leave anymore, and we talked for hours. Sometimes we touched, but we both did not want to. But still there was a certain tension between us for the whole night. A tension that told me there was more coming, and that I wanted more. And so did she, I felt. As the clock ticked past midnight, Sophia stood, her movements hesitant. "I should go," she said, her voice heavy with reluctance. I stood too, following her to the door. "Take care of yourself," I said, my chest tightening as she reached for the handle. She paused, turning to look at me one last time. "You too," she said, her eyes searching mine. "And thank you for not hating me." I managed a small smile. "There's nothing to hate, Sophia. Just be careful, okay?" She nodded, her gaze lingering on mine for a moment, before she stepped out into the night. As the door closed behind her, I leaned against it, my mind racing with everything that had happened, and everything that might still happen. Because deep down, I knew for a fact that this wasn't over yet. The way she looked me in the eyes, the way we kissed, the way we touched each other told me I was not done with her. She had evoked something in me I had never felt before. Such a young and beautiful woman. I am sure every lesbian would want to do certain things with her, and I felt she was open to it. So that left me thinking how I could make this work. The days following Sophia's visit were a blur of emotions I couldn't untangle. I went through the motions work, errands, the occasional phone call from Daniel, but my thoughts were consumed by that night by her Sophia. I told myself it would pass, that this was just a fleeting moment of weakness. But every time I closed my eyes, I saw her face, heard her voice, felt the warmth of her hand lingering against mine. The weight of it all was suffocating, and yet I couldn't bring myself to let go. It was late on a Thursday when the knock came at the door. I wasn't expecting anyone, and Danielle was still out of town. My heart jumped at the sound, a mix of anxiety and hope rushing through me. When I opened the door, there she was, Sophia. "I shouldn't be here," she said before I could say anything, her hands shoved deep into the pockets of her jacket. I know I shouldn't, but I couldn't stay away. The sight of her standing there, her expression a mix of vulnerability and determination, left me speechless. I stepped aside, wordlessly inviting her in. She hesitated for a moment before crossing the threshold, her presence filling the space in a way that felt both familiar and foreign. "I've been thinking about what happened," she said as she stood in the entryway, her gaze fixed on the floor. "And I can't stop. I can't stop thinking about you." Her words hit me like a punch to the chest, and I felt the air leave my lungs. "Sophia, we talked about this. It's complicated." "I know," she said quickly, her voice trembling. "I know it's complicated, and I know it's wrong, but that doesn't change how I feel. I don't know how to make it stop." I wanted to tell her that she wasn't alone, that I'd been feeling the same way, but the words wouldn't come. Instead, I reached out, my hand brushing against her arm. She flinched at the touch, but she didn't pull away. "Sophia," I said softly, my voice barely above a whisper. "We can't keep doing this." "I know," she repeated, her gaze finally lifting to meet mine. "But it's not that easy, is it? If it were, I wouldn't be here." Her honesty left me raw, stripped of any defenses I might have tried to put up. I stepped closer, my hand still on her arm. "What do you want me to say?" "I don't know," she admitted, her voice breaking. I don't want to lose you." "You won't," I said firmly, though I wasn't sure I believed it myself. "But this, whatever this is, it can't go any further." Her shoulders slumped, and I saw the weight of my words settle over her. "I don't know if I can stop feeling this way," she said quietly. Neither could I, but I didn't say it. We ended up in the living room again, sitting on opposite ends of the couch, like we had the last time. The space between us felt like a chasm, impossible to bridge without falling into the same mistakes. "I've known you for so long," Sophia said suddenly, breaking the silence. "You've always been this constant in my life, someone I could trust, someone who cared. And somewhere along the way, that turned into this." I swallowed hard, my chest tightening at her words. "I care about you too, Sophia. But this is dangerous. It could ruin everything." She nodded, her gaze dropping to her hands. "I know. I don't want to ruin anything, but I also don't want to pretend like this doesn't exist." The room felt unbearably quiet, the weight of our unspoken feelings pressing down on us. I wanted to say something to find the right words to make this easier, but nothing came. "I should go," she said finally, her voice heavy with resignation. "Sophia, no," she interrupted, standing abruptly. "I can't stay here. Not if it means feeling like this and not being able to do anything about it." I stood too, my heart racing as she turned to leave. "Wait," I said, my voice sharper than I intended. She froze, her hand on the doorknob. "What?" "I don't want you to go," I said, the words tumbling out before I could stop them. "I don't know what to do about this either, but I don't want you to leave." She turned slowly, her eyes wide with surprise. "You mean that?" I nodded, my throat tight. "Yeah, I do." The tension in the room shifted, the air between us crackling with unspoken possibilities. She took a hesitant step toward me, her eyes searching mine for permission, for reassurance. "I don't want to make things harder," she said softly. "But being here, being around you, it feels right, even when I know it shouldn't." My resolve crumbled at her words, and before I could stop myself, I closed the distance between us. My hand found hers, and she laced her fingers through mine, her touch both tentative and certain. "We're playing with fire," I said, my voice barely audible. "Maybe," she said, a faint smile tugging at her lips. "But it doesn't feel wrong, not to me." The hours that followed were a blur of whispered confessions and stolen moments. We didn't cross any lines. Not really, not yet. But the connection between us deepened, growing into something that felt impossible to ignore. As dawn broke, casting a soft light over the living room, we sat together on the couch, her head resting against my shoulder. Neither of us spoke, but the silence felt comfortable, like a truce. I knew this wasn't sustainable, that we couldn't keep walking this line without it breaking. But for now, at this moment, I let myself lean into it, knowing that the real world would come crashing in soon enough. After a long moment of silence, Sophia said, "Miss Johnson, I'm going to be honest with you. I really like you, and I don't want to hide it anymore. I'm still not sure how you feel about it, but I really need to get this off my chest." And in that moment, the tension changed immediately. I felt a moment of excitement go through me. Sophia had put herself in such a vulnerable position and had confessed her feelings that I said, "Sophia, I am so happy you're finally telling me this. Now, I have been feeling the same, and you attract me a lot. You're such a smart, beautiful, and good-looking young woman that it really excites. But I got interrupted. She grabbed me with her and kissed me. This time, a lot deeper, more sensitive, and I felt this was a relief for both of us. The kiss deepened, and after a minute of heavy kissing, she grabbed me on places I'd loved it to be touched by her. I let it all happen. The age difference did not matter. This was pure love. Now that her shirt was on the ground, I could finally enjoy her athletic upper body. At one moment, she stopped kissing me and went down. She did the thing, and even though I won't go in detail, I can tell you it was amazing. Her lips were so feminine, yet so skillful, that it drove me crazy. It went from bad to worse, and we did everything you can imagine. After we both finished, we lay there in each other's arms. It did not take long before Sophia fell asleep. She must have been exhausted. A moment later, I dozed off too. A couple hours later, as the sun rose higher, casting long shadows through the living room, as the weight of what we'd shared settled over us, Sophia shifted slightly, her head still resting on my shoulder. For a moment, I allowed myself to revel in the warmth of her presence, the steady rhythm of her breathing, the way her hand lightly brushed mine. It was quiet, but the silence wasn't empty. It was heavy, with the implications of what we'd done. Eventually, Sophia stirred, lifting her head and rubbing her eyes. "I should go," she said, her voice thick with exhaustion. "Before Danielle comes back." I nodded, knowing she was right, but feeling the ache of the impending distance between us. "Yeah, that's probably best." She stood and stretched, the light catching her face in a way that made my chest tighten. There was a vulnerability in her expression, a mixture of guilt and longing that mirrored my own. She hesitated as if she wanted to say something, but instead she just gave me a small, sad smile. "Thank you," she said softly, "for not pushing me away." I stood too, running a hand through my hair as I tried to find the right words. "Sophia, this is complicated. I don't know where we go from here, but I know I don't want to lose you. I care about you more than I probably should, but this can't be something we ignore. Not anymore." She nodded, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. "I know. I feel the same way." The air between us was charged, every unsaid word hanging in the space. Finally, she stepped toward the door, pausing with her hand on the handle. "I'll call you," she said, glancing back at me. "Okay," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. "Take care of yourself." "You too," she replied before slipping out into the morning light. The days that followed were excruciating. Sophia's absence was palpable, her absence leaving a void I hadn't anticipated. Danielle returned home, oblivious to the tension brewing beneath the surface. I did my best to act normal, to bury the emotions that threatened to bubble over every time I thought about Sophia. But it wasn't easy. Every time my phone buzzed, my heart leapt, hoping it was her. But she didn't call, and the silence between us grew heavier with each passing day. A week later, Sophia showed up at my door again. This time, there was no pretense, no excuses. She stood on the porch, her hands shoved into her pockets, her eyes meeting mine with a determination that stole my breath. "I couldn't stay away," she said, her voice steady, but tinged with vulnerability. "I tried, but I couldn't." I stepped aside, letting her in without a word. She moved past me, her presence filling the space as if she'd never left. We stood in the hallway, the weight of our unspoken feelings pressing down on us. "I thought about everything," she said, turning to face me. "About you, about us, about Danielle. And I know it's messy and complicated, but I also know I can't pretend like I don't feel this way, not anymore." Her words broke something open in me, and I felt a rush of emotions I couldn't contain. "Sophia, I started." But she cut me off. "I'm not asking for anything," she said quickly. I just needed to tell you to be honest with you. I don't want to hide this anymore, even if it means walking away. The thought of her walking away was unbearable, and before I could stop myself, I closed the distance between us. My hands found her face, and I pulled her into a kiss that was both desperate and tender. She responded immediately, her arms wrapping around me as if she were afraid I might disappear. We broke apart, both of us breathing heavily, our foreheads pressed together. I don't know where this goes, I admitted, my voice trembling. But I don't want to lose you. You won't, she said, her voice firm. Well, figure it out together. And the months that followed were a delicate balancing act. Sophia and I navigated our feelings carefully, keeping our connection hidden from Danielle and the rest of the world. It wasn't easy. There were moments of doubt, of fear, of questioning whether we were doing the right thing. But through it all, we clung to each other, finding solace in the bond we had forged. We knew it couldn't last forever, that the truth would come out eventually. But for now, we allowed ourselves to exist in the in-between, savoring the stolen moments and quiet confessions that made up our new reality. And as I looked at Sophia, her smile lighting up the room, I knew one thing for certain. Whatever challenges lay ahead, we would face them together, because some connections are too powerful to ignore, too deep to deny. And this, whatever this was worth fighting for.